Hey there folks, welcome to Truck King and a big road trip day. I am headed from my house just outside of Barrie, Ontario, all the way down to Washington, D.C. in that right there. That is the Ford F-250 Limited, fit with that high output power stroke diesel. So we're taking this bad boy. The whole trip is gonna be about 1,000 miles, and we'll see what the fuel economy is, how comfortable it is, and how it handles. Make sure you stay tuned. Alrighty folks, well the road trip is well underway, but let me just show you what we're working with here. I am here at a rest stop just outside of Bath, New York. So let's take a closer look at this truck. So this is the F-250 Limited. So when you go for the Limited, you automatically get this. That is the high output power stroke diesel. Numbers here are pretty ridiculous at 500 horsepower and 1,200 pound-feet of torque. And we will definitely talk more about how this thing feels once we get inside the truck. So take a look at our Limited here today. This is the style side box, Ford calls it. 176-inch wheelbase. Yes, folks, that is the long bed on the back there. So this is the longest version of this truck that Ford makes. Now, one thing I'll point out, because we are going to be talking fuel economy in this video, a pretty monstrous plastic air dam up here in the front end. And of course that is to help with fuel economy. So yes, we're going to track our fuel economy, of course, on this trip, and I'll be curious to see where it ends up. Now we have already taken one casualty on this trip. As you can see from the nose, actually we drove through the rain today, so the bugs mostly got cleaned off, but the front of this truck took a beating with the bugs, but it also took a beating right there. The front lens on the camera actually is cracked. Now this seems fairly common, and it's just from a rock or some other road debris that got tossed up into the nose of the truck and cracked the camera. At first, when I looked at it on the screen, I thought, hey, is there some water on that camera? I got out and went to go clean it off, and sure enough, nope. It's actually cracked. So now please let me know what you think of the styling on this truck. Like I said, it is monstrous with that 176-inch wheelbase. We will talk more about that too and how this thing actually drives down the road. We get back here to the back. On this truck, you're getting the bumper steps. You're getting the side step up there for the bed as well. This is a fully powered tailgate. Hit the button and down it comes. Now our bed, you can see right there, does have the factory puck system for a fifth wheel hitch or for a gooseneck. So this is ready to tow. You're also getting your light hookups and camera hookups there for one of those trailers. We have LED bed lighting, which works with a button. I like when there's a selectable button because sometimes you're just parked unloading or loading and you want to hit it to light up. And then one other system I'll show you in this corner. We do have Ford Pro Power on board, so that's a 2 kilowatt plug right there. And what I also noticed is that when you go for the Limited, that 2 kilowatts is actually standard, so you're not paying extra to get that. Now when it comes time to put the tailgate up, you simply start to lift it, and up it goes. So that's a quick walk around, folks. Now I want to tell you how this thing has actually been handling out here on the road. So let's hop inside, but before we do, one last number I have to leave you with, and that is the price. So in Canada, the truck you're looking at right here sells for $124,160. Certainly not a cheap truck. So yeah, let's go for a drive and talk about whether or not it's worth it. Here we go. in New York State on the way back to Canada, just outside of Prattsburg, New York, according to the road signs. So far we've done 840 miles. We got about 250 to go, so yes, we're going to be over 1,000 miles when all is said and done, and that will especially be interesting to look at the fuel economy and see what this truck manages. Now, the majority of the fuel economy number is going to be highway driving like this, but we did go downtown Washington, D.C. a couple times with the truck, so yeah, it'll have a little bit of city mixed in. So yes, we headed down to Washington, D.C. to watch my Toronto Blue Jays take on the Washington Nationals. And when we were looking at this trip, I usually try to book a vehicle which I think will be interesting for the YouTube channel to review on a road trip. But obviously I'm also looking for something that's going to be comfortable and, you know, decent on fuel. Now, we had this F-250 Limited already booked for a different video, and I was thinking, well, maybe I'll get something else, and I kind of arrived on, you know what, no, the fuel economy is actually so good that I'm not worried about spending way more money than if I took something else. And then the other big factor is the comfort level. And I feel like we do bring this up a lot in most heavy-duty truck videos these days, but it just can't be overstated how good these trucks have become at being daily drivers. When you're cruising on the interstate like this at 70 miles per hour, this truck is totally comfortable, it's quiet, it's easy to drive. You don't notice the length, of course, when you're out here on the highway. So yeah, in that respect, driving this F-250 has been no more sort of taxing or annoying than if we brought, say, an F-150. Now, when you're in town, I will gladly admit it is the opposite. This truck is massive. It's got the huge wheelbase. We were downtown DC in some tight streets, and yeah, the thing is a battleship. It doesn't want to turn around corners. I had to get into a parking garage and do quite a few 3, 4, 5-point turns to make it around corners. And then actually we even booked an Airbnb when we stayed there, and I couldn't get into the parking lot or the parking space for our little apartment because there was these little alleyways and the truck was just too big and too long to make the corner. So this might be an obvious point, but it has to be made, especially when you go for the 8-foot bed. These trucks are massive, and that is going to affect where you can take them, quite frankly. When you do take it into a big, dense city, not only are you more nervous about just driving around, making corners, you have to be more aware of what you're doing, but then parking. Parking, the situation basically always sucks. You're always looking for a spot that's big enough. If you're parallel parking, which I did a couple times, you need lots of space to swing out and get in there. So again, obvious fact, I know that, but this truck is big, and when you're going to a city especially, you're going to notice that. Now, when it comes to the suspension, I already told you, out here on the highway, the thing is totally comfortable. In town, over rough, broken pavement, sure, it kind of pronounces itself as a big, heavy-duty truck. But don't forget, this truck that we're in has a payload rating just under 3,000 pounds. So that's truly the incredible part of this, is this thing is still so capable. It has a great payload rating, a really good tow rating, so it can do some serious work. But then if you are daily driving it, you're just not giving up that much in comfort to go for one of these larger trucks. And I don't think that was the case, you know, even 10 years ago. I feel like these trucks have become daily drivers these days, so the brands have really focused on making them feel that way. So the driving experience here is comfortable, which sort of equals luxury, and that is matched by this interior. This is the Limited, this is the top trim in the heavy-duty lineup, so we're getting all of the features here. Not only do I like the material choices, I think it looks good, but a lot of the functional things work really well too, such as my head-up display. I have a massive head-up display in front of me. I think every vehicle could use a head-up display. This one has tons of good information. I like that your speed limit is displayed right next to your actual speed, so you always know sort of where you are around the speed limit. Right now I have the RPM up on screen, also my directions for navigation. Of course, I've got the nav plugged in, and it's always telling me, you know, how far until I need to make my next move. So I really appreciate the head-up display. And the other thing which I've really come to appreciate, especially on road trips, are massaging seats. Now, I think Ford probably has the best seats in pickup trucks right now, period. Whether it's F-150 or Super Duty, these Ford seats, they're just so adjustable. This one has 3 different lumbar supports. It can adjust in many different ways, and then it also has massages. I believe it's 6 different massage cycles and features. So yes, you can actually go through there. Oh, it's 5, I just pulled it up, but 5 different massages. So, and you can choose an intensity for each one. Now this is, again, not a new feature. Massaging seats have now been around for a while, but when you're just sort of driving around town for 20 minutes, half hour, it feels like more of a novelty. When you're out here doing, 500-600 miles in a day, I actually think it really helps you. It helps to keep you a little bit more alert. It helps to take some of that soreness out of your body that usually develops from sitting in the same position over many, many hours. So yes, this is not just Ford's massaging seats. I recently did a road trip in the Jeep Grand Wagoneer. That's here on the channel too, and I had the exact same experience in that vehicle, where the massaging seat I really feel like is absolutely worth it on one of these long drives. I mentioned the power numbers when we were outside the truck, so let me talk a little bit more about the powertrain here. And yes, this is the undisputed power champion right now in the heavy duty truck world, with that 1,200 pound-feet of torque. And this thing is ridiculously quick, again, for such a big, long, heavy truck. It's crazy how fast it jumps up to speed. Now, obviously, this is meant for towing a heavy trailer, and that's when you're going to really need that torque and that horsepower. But this is the kind of power plant that, even going uphill, I cannot imagine you would be strained and you'd be having to slow down and, put your 4-way flashers on in the right lane or anything like that. And that's truly what you're paying for when you get one of these high-powered diesels, is you just don't have to, here's that word again, compromise with something that has less power. You don't have to deal with some of those more nerve-wracking situations when you're towing. And then when you're not towing, yeah, it's just a crazy powerful vehicle, really easy to break the back end loose. You do have to learn to be a little more gentle with your right foot, because if you just mat it, you're going to be burning rubber every single time, just because the amount of torque that's here. And that is even more true when you're out in the rain, and we have been driving in the rain a decent amount on this trip. The next thing I want to touch on are the autonomous driving features, sort of the driver's aids here. So I do have adaptive cruise control, and then I also have a lane keeping system. Adaptive cruise works well. You get 4 different settings for the distance. That's also in my head-up display. One little kind of Easter egg that I love is when you use the adaptive cruise, the vehicle that's displayed in front of you, both on my driver info screen and on the head-up display, is a classic Ford truck. So just a fun little callback. It is cool when the brands do that. But yes, the adaptive cruise, no complaints there. That I absolutely like using on these long trips. For me though, the lane keeping system, I have to shut it off. And again, this is a personal thing, so I like to start out by saying that it does work well. When I've had it on, I haven't really noticed it making mistakes or anything like that. My biggest issue is, once again, I don't want to drive like the computer wants to drive. I'd like to be in a slightly different part of the lane. Maybe I'm passing a semi-truck. I give him a little bit more space. The truck doesn't do any of that. It has no context. It wants me in a specific part of the lane. In my opinion, it hugs the middle lane a little bit too tightly, but that's besides the point. I just don't want to drive like it, and so therefore, when it's turned on, I just constantly have this torque in my steering wheel that I'm fighting against. I find it to be more distracting and more fatiguing, so I absolutely just shut it off. I want to be able to drive where I want to be able to drive. My other complaint there is, if I allow the truck to sort of drive on its own with my hands on the wheel, I like to keep a really light grip on the wheel. I'm still right there and paying attention, but I'm allowing the system to do what it wants. Well, the issue there is, within 30 seconds, here comes the message, keep your hands on the wheel. And more than once, I'd be driving along, I would think that I was putting enough input into the wheel, and the truck still didn't think my hands were on the wheel. So I just got sick of it, dealing with it in the first couple 100 miles. I absolutely just shut it off. I always encourage people to drop it in the comments and sort of let me know your take on these autonomous drive features. But until it can get a little bit more natural feeling, I don't see myself using lane keep assist anytime soon. And all the brands are a little bit different with how they employ these systems, but I don't like a single one of them really, because they all, like I said, they just don't want to drive exactly like I do, and therefore I don't find it helpful. It's more of a hindrance. We will divulge the fuel economy at the end of this video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But another thing that's been excellent on a road trip with this truck is the range. Now, this thing does have a pretty big fuel tank, so it's also pretty pricey to fill it up. But once you're full, I actually saw 900 miles of overall range, which on a single tank of fuel is pretty incredible. And when you're not towing or hauling any weight, yeah, that number is accurate, and it just helps to not have to stop every couple of hours. Essentially for us, going from Toronto to DC, we filled up in Toronto before we left, went to Washington, went downtown, tooled around, went to the ballpark, and then we're on the way home now. I had to fill up once, 200 miles outside of Washington, and that's it. So, you call it 2 fill-ups, but really on the trip, it's only been 1 fill-up, and that's gonna get me all the way from Toronto to DC and back. So, love having that range. And once again, of course, on a truck that's meant to be towing and hauling, it's nice to have because your fuel economy is gonna take a hit once you load this thing up. But yeah, just driving empty, absolutely love having that big range. So, no real complaints on the F-250 Limited, besides, just how big it is, but you can't complain about that. It's that big for a reason, especially if you have, say, a travel trailer, you need that 8-foot bed. So that's more something to be aware of rather than a complaint. But now we do have to circle all the way back around to the price. I told you over $120,000 here in Canada. All of these trucks feel so expensive these days. I certainly won't argue the point that this is a good value. If I did have to argue that point, though, I would say that it is incredible how little compromise there is here. This is a vehicle that can tow and haul massive amounts of weight. It can haul 4 people realistically, absolutely in total comfort. The backseat back there is monstrous as well. And it has all of the luxury features you could ever want, plus great utility features like the bed step and Pro Power on board. So yes, if I was arguing the point that it's a great value, I would say that it truly is a vehicle that can basically do it all. And then on the flip side of that point is just, yeah, how expensive these trucks have gotten. They keep on getting more expensive. Every time we get new truck launches, there's always some new luxury trim that is joining the lineup rather than a new base trim. The base models have been pumped with content, which, is kind of nice when you get in a base truck these days and you're getting so many features out of the box, but that also, of course, drives up that base price. So at the base level even, yeah, all of these trucks feel very expensive. So I won't defend the price, but I will say if you do drop that money, you're getting a vehicle, yeah, that does everything it promises pretty dang well. Alrighty, folks, we just pulled into the house, which means we're all done the trip, and now we can look at the numbers. So we did 1,035 miles, and we managed 19.9 miles per gallon, which feels like a pretty dang good number for this size of truck. Now we will go over here and we will switch out the units for all my Canadian folks, like so. And now you can see we did 11.7 liters per 100 over 1,667 kilometers. So as I said when I talked about picking this truck for the road trip, yeah, the fuel economy here is quite good for such a large, heavy vehicle, and I wouldn't think twice about taking it out on the road again. Well, folks, that is it for this one. We are home now. It was a great trip. Nice to see DC and the Blue Jays, even though they lost 2 games, whatever. So please go in the comments. Let me know what you think of this Super Duty Limited and the fuel economy that I managed. While you're down there, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member. Then come right back here to the channel to see what we're testing next. See ya.